So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2025 Valero Texas Open. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Monday evening over at the extended forecast look in Windfinder. Looks like my camera is going to be freezing, so we'll probably freeze that or turn it off. Maybe not so bad now. We'll see how it goes. All right, the forecast for the Valero Texas Open. As you would expect in Texas, it's going to be windy. Not a whole lot on Thursday, perhaps some in the morning, and then supposedly dying down in the afternoon. But Friday has some rain in the forecast along with high winds. Same with Saturday. Sunday, no rain. A little bit on the chillier side, high only in the mid-60s, but a lot of wind. So too early to assume a wave advantage. If you wanted to be technical and go off this, you would think the Thursday PM would have the advantage just because it says that they're not going to be dealing with much wind Thursday afternoon. Of course, we'll update this at the beginning of the show Wednesday night before we cover the mixed condition model and all that. But there is a look at the forecast for San Antonio and the Oaks course. Lots and lots of wind in the forecast this week. So with that, we'll move to Fantasy National, the players in the field this week. There's been one more field change for this week. Michael Kim has withdrawn. I don't think he was a withdrawal as of last night. Maybe he was. Michael Kim not playing since he has qualified for the Masters. Michael Kim is withdrawn, and the most recent field change, Taylor Moore has decided not to play this week. Taylor Moore is not in the field. So make sure you're cognizant of those two players as you're building lineups and such throughout the week. I'm going to go back to the beginning of 2023. Thanks to that forecast, we're going to take a look at performance in moderate and windy conditions. So your top performers in the field this week in moderate and windy conditions: Patrick Cantlay, Denny McCarthy, Jordan Spieth, Sam Burns, Ricky Fowler, Matt Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors, Harry Hall, Andrew Novak, and Justin Rose. Those are your top 10 in terms of total performance in the wind. The only other filter that we're going to look at loosely this evening is long courses. If we take a look at the historic conditions, remember last night, we're mostly dealing with an average difficulty tournament. Last year played pretty difficult, but even the playoff participants, Akshay and Denny McCarthy, they got out to 20 under. Third place was 11 under, so it played pretty difficult considering they were dealing with a whole lot of wind throughout majority of the tournament. But most of the time, we're looking at an average difficulty tournament. You might get a few rounds of easy if the wind dies down, especially if the wind picks up a whole lot, it could get difficult, but mostly looking at average. And because of that, I don't really feel comfortable looking at average difficulty relative to par. If someone wants to make a strong case for it in the chat or in the comments, we can perhaps take a look at it. But it's not my favorite as a statistician to look at that filter. So instead, we're going to look at what we know, which is that TBC San Antonio, specifically the Oaks course, is over 7,400 yards. It's about 7,430 or so. So just over that threshold. Par 72, so won't play as long as, say, Memorial Park and such will. But it is very consistent in playing over 7,400 yards throughout the years. So your top performers in the field this week on long courses Hideki, Corey Connors, Ludwig Aubert, Tommy Fleetwood, Keegan Bradley, Justin Lauer, Max Homa, Sam Stevens, Akshay Bhatia, Patrick Cantlay, and Keith Mitchell. Kevin Tway and Hayden Springer are starred because they are alternates as of the moment. All right, that's going to be basically it in terms of review or high-level overview of TBC San Antonio. Good evening, Derek. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. How are you this evening? I'm going to be honest, I'm just exhausted. I am really, really tired. But it's good to see you this evening. Again, much appreciated for you dropping by and jumping in chat. We're going to go ahead and head to Microsoft Excel and take a look at some deep statistical analysis of TBC San Antonio and the Oaks course. You notice that the off the tee somewhat consistent over the years, and really it is right about full field course average in terms of the importance of off the tee. Now the approach has been wildly inconsistent. I can't say that. Let me rephrase that. It's been actually fairly consistent with the exception of this very low outlier 3 years ago. If we remove that, the importance actually does jump up to a decent, significance. So we definitely don't want to ignore the approach. But something that I was pretty surprised about as I was digging into some of the numbers today is just how consistent and important around the green has been here at the Oaks course at TBC San Antonio. It has been a very, very consistent metric, and it has outweighed the off the tee by, a small factor. And because of this around the green number is actually quite a bit larger than the average full field course on the PGA Tour. So because of that, I think we're going to need to incorporate some around the green in our thought process this week. Now, if we skip ahead a little bit, I think a lot of it has to do with these sand saves. And Gabe, and again, I can't recommend enough Gabe's article that comes out every Sunday to get us prepared for the week at hand. He mentioned in his article how playing from the sand at the Oaks course can be difficult. So you see this monstrosity of a number. This might actually, in fact, be the largest number on the PGA Tour for full field courses, and in fact it is at near 80%. So we're definitely going to be looking at some around the green this week, and of course we're not going to ignore the putting, but it's not all that important. We saw that it was about 5% less than the average full field course. Yeah, we'll probably have our 5% in Poa Trivialis putting and go from there. But my guess is that a lot of this around the green is from sand saves. So and look how consistent these sand saves are as well. So we'll probably take a look at some sand saves tonight as well. But in terms of the four major strokes gained categories, we're not going to overlook the approach. Again, I was surprised with the around the green, but I think the data warrants that we take a look at some around the green. We'll have a little bit of putting. Off the tee, I'm a little bit mixed. I have some mixed feelings about. I don't know if we really need to look at off the tee. If we do, it'd be something like on long courses. But having said that, there are several short par fours on the Oaks course. So I'd be interested to hear Chat's opinion on it. If you're not able to catch the show live, put it in the comments. What do you think in terms of off the tee at the Valero? Do you think it's important, not important, somewhere in the middle? I'd be interested to hear from you all on that. Moving to distance and greens, fairways and whatnot. Distance, not a big factor here. Really isn't. Especially when you compare it to the average full field course, it's very, very low. Just not a big factor here, which is also helping drive the off the tee. I don't want to say insignificance, but I guess mitigation. Fairways, maybe a little bit. You've got one extremely high outlier, one extremely low outlier. Those cancel out to about full field course average. We talked about the sand saves. Maybe it's in these good drives because, and I know the vision will be skewed, but when we looked at the breakdown last night, these greens are difficult to hit, despite their size. They are actually slightly larger than PGA Tour average. So maybe greens, but I'm thinking more good drives, especially since distance is not that big of a deal. And then, of course, sand saves. Moving on to scoring, the more consistent metric is usually bogey avoidance. The higher spike is in birdies gained. Surprisingly, though, birdies gained has been slightly more consistent. Now, you do have just one extremely high outlier in the bogey avoidance, so that you remove that, they've been a little bit more consistent with that. But looks like the spike and overall the consistency goes to the birdies gained. Having said that, they're both right around PGA Tour average. Bogeys slightly higher than the birdies against the average full field course. How does this course and last week's course translate to the Masters? Can we expect people playing well these 2 weeks to play well next week? Well, what I will tell you, and I tried to do some research on this today, just simply didn't get around to it. Most of the players in the field this week are trying to qualify. I know there are some exceptions. Cantley's here, Tommy Fleetwood's here. But the idea, at least from the tournament setup, both last week and this week, is to try to set the course up as much as possible to Augusta National. Now, Augusta is, very hilly terrain, extremely fast greens. The Oaks course cannot. I mean, they simply cannot have fast greens generally because of the wind. But they do try to set it up similarly to Augusta in the sense that there's very little rough. A lot of the same skill sets are needed. We'll take a casual look at maybe 3 or 4 players to see how they've done at the Masters versus here. Particularly here, I'm thinking, what Cantley's done, what Fleetwood's done. Obear would only have 1 year, so I don't think he'd be the best case study because it's a very small sample. Maybe Siwoo Kim. I think he's in the field this week. I'd be interested to take a casual look. I meant to have something, much more detailed. I didn't get around to it. It's a very, very logical and good question, Derek. The simple answer is I don't know at the moment, and I don't know how much I'm gonna factor it in, to be honest. I think I'm just more focused on who's gonna play the Oaks course the best. That's the way I approached last week, and it was a success. So if it ain't broke, I ain't gonna try to fix it. Best way I can put that. So we'll probably look at some birdies gained, more than likely. Maybe a little bit of bogey avoidance, but right now I would lean birdies gained. Moving to the par 3s, 4s, and 5s. You see the par 3s, 70%, maybe a little bit less, 65 to 70%, coming from the 175 to 200, despite the fact that there is one par 3 in each of these ranges on the scorecard. So quite interesting. They do provide a decent amount, even though they were quite mitigated in terms of the graphical view. I don't think we want to ignore them, even though they are quite a bit less than the average full field course. I don't know, 1.24, 1.74 from Houston. You notice that I've taken the previous years when it was played in the fall, so I'm only looking at 2 years there, but something like the Valspar's are 1.8, so maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe the par 3s really don't matter around the Oaks course. Par 4s, one pretty darn low outlier here. You remove that, 6% more important, okay. But you see where a lot of it is, the 350 to 400, we have a bevy of 400 to 450s as well. But the biggest strokes gained are here. More consistent is the 400 to 450. Interesting. So you can make a case to look at these three ranges. That's what we'll probably do tonight. And then the par 5s equally distributed among the 550 to 600 and the 600 to 650. So quite interesting there. But they do provide a lot. 1.83, 9% more important than the average full field course. And then the proximities, 200 plus. But remember, and again, I said the vision will be skewed. I went ahead and changed it. You have a lot of approaches between 75 and 125, especially compared to the full field, the tour average course. So you got a lot of wedges in hand here at the Oaks course. 100 to 125, 125 to 150 might be something there. So there's a deeper statistical look into the Oaks course and TPC San Antonio. We'll head back to Fantasy National, take a look at the players in the field this week who we think fit the mold of the statistics that we just looked at. Before we do that, I do want to take a casual look here on how some of these Masters performers, particularly this week, or how they've performed at the Valero versus the Masters. So let's go ahead and do that. Take a look at this tournament history, Derek. We'll do just a quick scan of a strokes gained total. Like Corey Connors generally has played well here. Two-time champion. It's interesting that he was a Monday qualifier in 2019 and then wins. He's clearly liked this course. There's something about this course that he likes. And then at Augusta, got 3 top 10s. He's been a little subpar the past couple of years, but there's at least some correlation there, I would say. Absolutely. You take a look at Spieth. We all know about his performance at the Masters. He's been good here. Siwoo. I'm not terribly familiar with Siwoo's performance at the Masters, but he's been pretty good here. Siwoo's been okay. Top 15, but fairly middling overall. Making cuts, but not necessarily contending at the Masters. So, Hideki, Masters champion, has played well here. Gary Woodland's played well here. Not terribly familiar with his Masters performance. Keegan. There's Tommy. He's only played here once, but it was a top 10. He's been good at the Masters. So, on a very shallow level here, I would say there seems to be some pretty solid correlation based on just performance or finishing position. I shouldn't say performance. Based on finishing position. Played at the Masters. We'll take a quick look. I don't know offhand what he's done at the Masters. Pretty hit and miss. He did top 15 a couple years ago. Missed the cut last year. You can forgive dealing with a lot of the health issues that he was dealing with. But he's been pretty hit and miss. So that might be an exception to the rule, or one example where correlation isn't between the two. But again, on a very high level, without doing a whole lot of mathematical calculations and things of that, just based on finishing position, there seems to be a modicum of correlation between performance here at the Oaks course and next week at Augusta National. It is both courses, because you asked about last week in Memorial Park as well. The good thing, if you're trying to make that correlation, is that both courses are long. Both of them are over 7,400 yards. Augusta is a long course as well. So there's some stuff there. I think there's some traction there. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of these statistics that we want to look at. I'm going to use the long course filter if that forecast holds that we saw at the beginning of the night. I could see an argument that this will play difficult, and we might incorporate some difficult relative to par filters in the mixed condition model, but I'm going to hold off on that until the forecast kind of stabilizes throughout the week. So on long courses, and I think this is enough rounds. Yeah, Ober's got 40. On long courses, in the past, say 15 months, your top performers off the tee have been Keith Mitchell, Ludwig Ober, Isaiah Salinda, Jordan Spieth, Alejandro Tosti, Rico Hoey, Matt McNeely, Webb Simpson, Corey Connors, and Jesper Svensson. Again, skipping Taylor Moore, he has withdrawn this week. We're definitely not going to be overlooking the approach. Your top iron players so far this calendar year in the field this week for the Valero: Tom Kim, Henrik Norlander, Tommy Fleetwood, Tom Hoagie, Jackson Suber, Keegan Bradley, Bud Colley, Ryan Gerard, Denny McCarthy, Patrick Cantlay, and Charlie Hoffman. We'll take a quick look at around the green. I think this is more so sand saves, so we'll really dig into that on that page view. But your top around the green players: Hideki, Aaron Baddeley, Peter Malnati, Alex Smalley, Kevin Kisner, C.T. Pan, Webb Simpson, Bo Hostler, Harry Hall, Patton Gazire. And then we'll take an extended look at the Poa Trivialis putting, since for the, I think, 4th week in a row we are on Poa Trivialis. So let me check all of the courses that we use or that we know uses Poa Trivialis overseed. TPC, San Antonio, Sawgrass, and Scottsdale. Will apply those filters. Your top putters on Poa Trivialis the past several years: Sam Ryder, Matt Kuchar, Denny McCarthy, Sam Burns, Brian Harmon, Tommy Fleetwood, Chad Ramey, Ben Griffin, Matt McNeely, Jake Knapp. We'll take a look at spike percentage just very, very quickly. The players most often gaining 3 or more strokes in their rounds on Poa Trivialis: Noah Goodwin. Again, very small sample size. It's only 7 rounds. But he's done it twice. Now, he put pretty poorly last week at Houston, but he put very well the first couple of days at the Valspar. Take that for what you will. You want to actually get some players with data significant enough to put some value into it: Will Chandler, Ryan Gerard, Ricky Castillo, Jacob Bridgman, Sam Ryder. These are the 5 players that have done it with any amount of rounds and have double digits. Maybe some other notables here: Matt McNeely 9%, Kuchar 9%, Berger 7%, Finau 7%. So there's a few of the players who have spiked on Poa Trivialis. Some notable players perhaps that have not spiked at all on this surface: Chan Kim 30 rounds, C.T. Pan, Trey Mullinax, Max McGreevy, Seamus Power. I saw Ricky over down here. He's never gained, or I shouldn't say never. He has not gained 3 strokes in a round on Poa Trivialis since 2022. Nate Lashley, Joel Damon, Matty Schmid. So there's a few of the players. Ludwig Ober has never spiked. Never gained 3. He hadn't been bad. He's just never went nuclear in the past 3 years on Poa Trivialis. So There's a look at some spike putting. We'll move to fairways, greens. And I kind of like this good drives gained idea for this week. So we'll take a look at good drives gained with on long courses. Your top good drives gained players: Ben Coles, Corey Connors, Grayson Sigg, Tommy Fleetwood, Rico Hoey, Andrew Putnam, Ben Martin, Tony Finau, Daniel Berger, and Joel Damon. And then the other thing that we really want to take a strong look at, let's take a look at sand saves. And I'm just going to look at 2025. I might look at 2024, excuse me, or add 2024 in the mixed condition model. I just got to take some time to think about it. Your top sand saves players so far in 2025: Hideki, Siwoo Kim, Matt Fitzpatrick, Bud Cauley, Matteo Manassero, Keith Mitchell, Brian Harmon, Ludwig, Kevin Kisner, Webb Simpson. Again, skipping Michael Kim, he has withdrawn. All right, we'll take a look at scoring. I think we're going to look at birdies. Birdies gained for tonight. And we'll take a look at it on long courses. Again, if I have a strong conviction that it'll play difficult due to the forecast, I'll explain that Wednesday night. I just kind of want that forecast to settle and see how it looks as we get closer to the tournament. Your top birdies gained players. In fact, before I do that, let me bring back the detail here. I know the vision's skewed. I do want to look at eagles. Yeah, there's not many. I didn't think there was, but I wanted to double check that. There's really not that many. So your top birdies gained players in the field this week on long courses: Justin Lauer, Ludwig Aubert, Frankie Capan, Sam Burns, Antoine Rosner, Keegan Bradley, Charlie Hoffman, Jordan Spieth, Max Homa, Chan Kim, Matty Schmid. If you want to look at bogey avoidance, McCarthy, Batia. So hard to argue those two, considering the performance they put on last year. Maybe we add some significance here for bogey avoidance. McCarthy, Batia, Keith Mitchell, Corey Connors has played very well. All right, so Sam Stevens has played very well here. So perhaps it's more fitting to look at bogey avoidance. Just seeing who does well on bogey avoidance on long courses and seeing the extreme correlation, particularly with last year's Valero. But, I mean, even Sam Stevens has played well here. We see that. I mean, he's what? Top 8? Easily top 10 in terms of strokes gained total. Fleetwood, he's only played here once, but he was good. So, yeah, maybe we're looking at bogey avoidance. Denny McCarthy, Batia, Keith Mitchell, Connors, Stevens, Fleetwood, Siwoo Kim, Grayson Sigg, Nick Hardy, Chris Ventura. Proximity. I am quite interested in some of these shorter proximities, so we'll check those. Homa is 7,000. Is this where we take a chance with him? I saw his name pop up. I can't. I mean, he has shown just no signs of life recently. He just hasn't. If there was anything to go on, like the players was horrendous. Like, he gained off the tee at the Arnold Palmer, but everything else was really bad. Like, I don't think so, Derek. I don't think so. If you're willing to, I mean, he's clearly one of the more talented players, or at least bigger name recognitions in this field. But, I mean, it's been pretty bad for a while now. So, I can't get there this week. I just can't. I'm quite interested in seeing some of these lower proximities. I'm kind of mainly looking at these three. I'll sort on total procs, but 75 to 125, maybe 125 to 150, thanks to what Microsoft Excel showed us. Yeah, that set profile is horrid. Well, I mean, to be fair, he has played horrid lately. Just no other way around it. until he shows some semblance of, not even his former self, just some semblance of life, I'll stay away. Let's see, some of these players that have some strong proximities, short proximities. Bud Cauley makes some sense. Third in total procs, but nothing that's real flashy in the short proximity. He's just kind of good. Tom Kim certainly makes a lot of sense. He's been very good with his wedges so far in 2025, or short proximities. Ludwig makes a lot of sense. But most of these other players are, kind of like Joel Damon. They're really good at 2 and then really struggle at 1. Or like Rico Hoey's very good at 1 and then pretty mediocre and bad on the other 2. So really only about 3 or 4 names here. And they're not the names that I would have, that popped off the page like the bogey avoidance did. Like McCarthy. McCarthy, not very good from 125 to 150. He's okay with 75 to 100, but still nothing spectacular. So the names here, probably an honorable mention here to Bud Cauley. Tom Kim would absolutely fit. Ludwig Aubert to a little bit of a lesser extent. That's really kind of about it. I would say, okay. Webb Simpson's been pretty good at these shorter proximities so far in 2025, but I don't think anybody's getting excited to roster or bet Webb Simpson, so We'll move to par 3s. Again, most of the strokes gained were in the 175 to 200. We look at the breakdown. You got 171, makes sense. It could be risen into that 175 to 200 bucket. 183 pretty solidly in that range. 241 is going to be, I'd be very hard pressed to believe that drops below 200. And then you have a 207, which could, as they move tees and pins around. So looking at 175 to 200 par 3s, Garnett, Batia. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's increase the sample size here because not every course has 175 to 200 par 3s, and if they do, it might just be 1, etc., etc. So, top par 3 performers from 175 to 200, going back to last year: Denny McCarthy, Vince Whaley, Baddeley, Lonto Griffin, Corey Connors, Ryan Fox, McNeely, Rico Hoey, Ricky, and Bryce Garnett. Par 4s. I will sort this on total par 4s, but we're looking at these 3 ranges in particular. So Tommy is number 1 in total par 4s, but he's pretty solid in all of these lengths. Jacob Bridgman, top 30 in all of them. Probably an honorable mention to Corey Connors. Top 10 in 1, good in the others. Matt Kuchar, essentially top 25 in all of them, so solid. Cantley probably gets an honorable mention. McCarthy gets an honorable mention. Solid profile there. Akshay, strong in these 3 lengths. So we're mostly focused on these 3 lengths here. And I wouldn't be surprised if I just put 5% in each of these come Wednesday night for the mixed condition model. But we'll have to see, because we're definitely going to be adding some around the green and some sand saves, which I didn't think we were going to at the beginning of the week. And then lastly, par 5s. We'll sort on the total, but we're mostly looking at these 2 ranges here. So somebody like Siwoo, fairly solid in both. Ludwig. Hideki really stands out in this regard. 3rd and 10th. Novak, 4th and 7th. Victor Paris. Bronson Burgoon. Interesting name. 24th and 25th. Taking advantage of, he's been good on the par 5s of the length here at the Valero. Okay. All right. With that, we'll go to Microsoft Excel, bring up the early look file for the week. Again, performance at the Oaks course, going back to 2021, where some of the stats are. We'll sort on some of these metrics that are definitely going to be important for the week. So your top approach players at the Oaks course past 4 years. Tom Hoge, it's just one time. Jordan Spieth, Corey Connors. Tommy was really good in his 1 year. Brant Snedeker, 3 for 3 here. He's been very good with his irons. There's Woodland, Sam Stevens. Finau's been good with the irons, but he actually hasn't done anything else well around the Oaks course. Just the irons. Batia's been very good in all aspects. Hideki's been pretty solid, doing a lot of Hideki things, losing on the green, gaining everywhere else. McCarthy's been very good. He's been average off the tee, but that's not Denny McCarthy's game. Other notables maybe Matt Kuchar. Ricky's been good with the irons, leaving a lot to be desired in terms of total performance. But irons have been good. Around the green's been good. He's been average, slightly less on putting, but okay. Martin Laird, fair enough. Your top putters on these greens at the Oaks course. Montgomery, who's actually out of the field, so let me remove him. Brian Harmon, it's just one time. S.H. Kim, kind of interesting. Somebody who's been mostly on the Korn Ferry Tour this year. Perhaps a 6K play. I don't know his price, but somebody to maybe think about because he's been pretty successful here. No surprise with Denny McCarthy. Sam Stevens has been good on these greens. Malnati, no surprise, really good putter. Kuchar. Carl Yuan, 1 for 2. Vince Whaley. Baddeley. Justin Lauer. Chris Kirk. Trying to highlight players that have played it more than one time. There's Homa. He did finish 25th in his one performance at the Valero, but again, as I was mentioning, I mean, he hasn't shown any form lately. Bo Hostler, 4 for 4, leaving a lot to be desired in terms of finishing position, but he's putt well here. We'll go to, let's do sand saves. Your top sand saves players in the past 4 years at the Valero. Aaron Baddeley, no surprise. Malnati. There's S.H. Kim again. Chris Kirk, 3 for 3. Matty Schmid. Matt Kuchar again. Garnett, only 1 for 3. Dylan Wu. Patty Harrington. Harry Hall. Gary Woodland again. All right. Interesting stuff there. We're going to skip the par threes. We're going to skip the scoring. Let's go to par fours. We will sort on total par fours, but again, we're kind of focused on these three ranges here. But best par four performers: Jordan Spieth, former champion; Akshay Bhatia. Gosh dang it, Akshay Bhatia, defending champion. Woodland's been good here. Corey Connors has been good here. So you see the importance of these total par fours. Like Corey Connors has been pretty solid at all of them, really excelling at the 450 to 5s, whereas somebody like Bhatia, much more balanced in where he's gaining his strokes on the par fours. There's Keith Mitchell. There's Siwoo, 3 for 3. McCarthy, 3 for 3. Playing these par fours very, very well. Tommy, 1 for 1. There's Bo Hostler again. Okay. I think that's decent because I'm not totally sold on what proximities, if any, I'm going to use this week. So we'll finish up with some of the research that that would have led me to post, but I just didn't get around to it today. over on social media. So we'll take first we'll take a look at the winner matrix performance of former champions at the course before they won. See, Batia was fairly middling the year prior. Missed the cut the first time he played and then win, so he didn't have a whole lot of success prior to his win. Corey Connors, a little bit on the opposite end of that spectrum. He's had quite a bit of success here. Again, Monday qualified in 2019 and then wins that same week. But he's had some success. Top 15 previously as well. Top 30 in his first time. JJ Spawn missed the cut twice before winning. But the one commonality here between all of them is that they, and put whatever weight you want into this, but they at least played it the year prior. They didn't skip a year before winning. So if they didn't play the Valero last year, I probably, especially for wagering, now DFS might be a different story, but for wagers, make sure they played the Valero last year. And you see, they don't have to have had a lot of success. Like JJ Spawn missed the cut twice. Batia was never really great here. Landry only played it once before winning. Kevin Chappell had played it very well before winning. Charlie Hoffman had played it very well before winning. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag there in terms of performance at the Valero. But they at least played it. And all of these former champions, again, all of these former champions played the Valero the year prior. We'll take a look at how their most recent performance went. Almost every one of these players, now we don't get the stats from the Corrales. The Masters is proprietary. But in these measured rounds, almost all of them gained on approach their last time out. So make sure, and that's, again, another one of the big reasons why I'm completely away from Max Homa, Derek, is that his irons have been really bad. I mean, his whole game has been really bad, but he definitely didn't gain on approach his last time out. And you see all but one of these players did. All but one of these champions did. Distance isn't mandatory, but this is another reason why I like good drives gained. Almost all of these past champions, and in fact the past 7 champions at the Valero, gained on good drives. They gained on greens, so they were more precise as opposed to the distance. Distance isn't mandatory around here. Speaking to the bogey avoidance, look at that. They also were avoiding bogeys coming into this tournament, so that's something to think about, particularly for wagers. Make sure they're very good with their irons, and they've been hot with their irons lately. They tend to be more precise as opposed to distance. They're actually hitting fairways, hitting greens, and they're avoiding bogeys in their most recent start. If we look at these past champions and what their form was coming in to the Valero, you see Akshay had a couple of top 20s, had several top 20s in that calendar year. Corey Connors did miss the cut at the Players in 2023. He just had a bad week because he's very rarely going to lose 2 on an approach. But he had some success at least as well. Top 25, top 15, top 20. He had some, or at least a modicum of success early on in 2023. Wins the Valero. JJ Spawn, yeah, top 30 at the Valspar doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, but he was red hot with the irons coming in. Had another top 30, had another top 20. Spieth, 2021. Several top 5s. Hot with the irons. Connors in 2019, hot with the irons. Or, probably just average for Corey Connors considering how good of an iron player he is, but he was good with the irons coming in. He even had a top 5 early on in the calendar year. So one of the other things to look out for, again, if it isn't obvious with the emphasis on the irons here, Make sure these guys have at least been in contention at some point early on in this calendar year. You know, I would say maybe a top 20 at some point. Like Andrew Landry, as random as seemingly random as his win was, he still was in contention at one point early on in that year. Connor's the same. Jordan Spieth, several top fives. JJ Spawn had, couple of top 25s. Batia had been strong lately. So there's some things to look for as you proceed and move forward this week, particularly with the outrights. Hopefully I've given you a few things to narrow down your pool of players that you're going to consider perhaps putting some waiters on. So that's going to be it for the show this evening. Thanks, Derek, for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. For yours truly, we're going to try to keep the momentum going. We're going to try to find back-to-back winners, having hit the Minwoo outright last week at 35-1. And a fairly solid DFS as well. Minwoo was part of my core. Jaeger was part of my core. Finished, T11. I did full fade Scotty. I did full fade Rory. So that definitely limited the amount of success I was going to have. But overall, it was a very, very strong week at Memorial Park last week. And we're going to try to keep it rolling for the Valero. So thanks again for all the support. For all the wagers you've made so far this week for the Valero Texas Open, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Valero Texas Open, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.